I'm a 27-year-old male now, but the story takes place when I was around 14 or so. I lived in North Carolina and I've lived there my whole life, even when this happened. I'm not a huge guy by any means, so at 14 I was thin as a toothpick with little to no muscle. This will be important in the story later. The following events took place around early December of 2011. It was late at night in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was home alone. My mom was working in urgent care that night and my dad was out of state on a business trip for work. Seeing as my mom worked late, I had the house to myself, and with it being winter break, I spent most of my night playing video games. Everything from COD all the way to Minecraft. After playing for quite some time, I take a look at the time and see that it's well past 9 p.m. Me, being the skinny kid I was, decided to head downstairs and fix myself a snack. As I'm heating up my food, I looked to my left and noticed the door that led into the basement was open. Now, my family is very strict when it came to leaving doors open, and I always made sure to close them. Mind you, I rarely go into the basement, so I was surprised that my parents left it open. Having OCD myself, I prefer things organized, so I went over to close the door when my heart sank. I almost didn't notice it, but at the end of the stairs was a black figure sitting on the bottom step. By some stupid luck, he was facing the other way, so he didn't see me. I felt my heart legitimately sink into the pit of my stomach as I realized what was happening. While I didn't see their face, I did see the back of them. They appeared to be male and wore torn clothing with gray, messy hair. With not many options to choose from, I run upstairs and hide under my bed, not making a sound. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, and I sure as hell wasn't going into the kitchen to get the home phone. With nothing to do, I just stayed in my room, hiding under my bed, when I hear footsteps coming up the basement stairs. At this point, I knew whoever this person was knew I was here. In my innocent 14-year-old head, I prayed he would just leave if he knew there was someone else here. However, that simply wasn't the case. Instead of accepting that there was someone else here, he took it a step further and proceeded to walk upstairs to my room. I hear him coming and I come up from under my bed with my mind racing on what to do. Now, this is where my lack of strength comes into play. I was trapped in my room, I didn't have a weapon, and I wasn't sure what this person was capable of doing. With no other option, I go to my window and attempt to open it as a way to escape. However, the cold weather from outside made it more difficult for me to open the window as the frame was basically frozen. All the while, I'm trying to get it open and I hear the footsteps walk up the stairs and stop at my door. He then proceeds to knock, followed by him mumbling something I couldn't understand. What freaked me out the most about this was the way he knocked. It was slow and steady, almost as if he were trying to intimidate me somehow. He tried twisting the doorknob, but it didn't budge, as I had thankfully remembered to lock it. In that moment, I had a hard time getting the window open when I suddenly hear a loud bang and see my door is now open. At that point, I pushed the window with all my strength and finally managed to get it open. I took that chance to climb out, and as I did, I caught a glimpse of the man's face before falling to the snow below. Fortunately, I was able to get away to the neighbors with only a sprained ankle, where police were then called. While the neighbors were nice, they let me call the police myself as they didn't want to get involved. A bit strange, I thought, but I could understand why. The police were very patient with me, but even after searching the house, they were unable to find him. What police had concluded was that he had entered the house through our breezeway door and was likely hiding from the cold. My mom came soon after, and we spent the next 3 days at my uncle's house. I'm much older now, and I have moved past it. My parents still live in that same house, but have installed various security systems and even have a dog. I still think about this incident from time to time, but I'm doing alright. Many years ago, I moved back to my hometown after recently suffering from a job loss. Back then, the job market for my field of study was very competitive, and I had moved back home to go back to school for my master's degree. It's not important, but it explains the reason why I was home in the first place. It was the summer of 2005, and I had just gotten home from class after a long and heavy lecture. My mom was out of state visiting a friend, and my sister was at a party, which meant I'd be home alone. It was around 10 p.m. and I was tired, so I decided to call it a night and get some sleep as I had a 7 a.m. class in the morning. I remember showering and taking my daily supplements before drifting off into a deep sleep. I'd say I slept for a good few hours or so before waking up to the sound of my bedroom door opening. It was pitch dark in my room and someone had stepped inside, but I couldn't see who it was. In my tired state, I see what I thought was my sister come into my room and start opening my closet drawers, shuffling through my stuff. "Haley?" I said. The shuffling stopped for a good moment before I called out for my sister once again. "Haley?" In that moment, I was pretty annoyed that she had woken me up when she knows I don't like it when she comes into my room. I was confused though. Why wasn't she responding to me? Did I do something to make her mad? Too tired to really care, I fall back asleep and wake up the next morning to go make breakfast. Sitting on the kitchen table was Haley eating a bowl of cereal. I of course confronted her about last night, asking her what the hell was so important at 2 a.m. She stops eating and looks at me with this confused face, saying she didn't know what I was talking about and that she came home well past 4. I felt my entire body freeze as she said this. "Haley, are you sure you didn't come into my room last night?" She made it absolutely clear that she didn't, and it was at that point when I decided to check my parents' security cameras. To our surprise, the security cameras revealed a man wearing all black enter our home and looking through stuff. In his hand, an axe. The way he got in was from me being a dumbass and forgetting to shut the door all the way. My parents were obviously pissed, but we're thankful nobody got hurt. We ended up doing a police report, and it turns out that they actually seen this man before. He had a history of breaking into multiple homes to steal jewelry and other valuables. Police had even told us that he was wanted for sexual assault and battery. Thankfully, however, they were able to find and arrest him just a few days later while breaking into another family's home. Turns out, the family's home he had broken into after hours had their 15-year-old daughter home alone taking a shower. The man had broken in through the back door with a custom tool that could easily break locks. Now, I won't go into exactly what happened, but long story short, he had heard the girl showering and broke down the bathroom door. Yeah, you get the picture. Thankfully, the girl was alright, but suffered from severe trauma for many months and even had to get therapy. I could have been very much the same had I not have woken up to say anything. Sure, I was a male and was relatively strong, but there was a chance I could have had something horrible happen to me had I not woken up. I still have nightmares about this till this day of the guy chasing me, trying to kill me. Sometimes he succeeds. I've always loved staying home alone. I thought of it as a sense of freedom and independence. This was especially true when I was younger, when my parents would always go out and run errands or at work. This happened in the late 80s when I was a 13-year-old boy. My family and I had lived in a small town in West Virginia outside of Charleston. It was a nice town. The people were nice, and you wouldn't have any problems with punk-ass kids throwing parties and stuff like that. Basically, if quiet was a town, this would be it. While I enjoyed the peace and calmness of it, that would all change in just one evening. If I'm not mistaken, it was winter break, and I had been home as a usual 13-year-old would. My parents were out shopping, as this was around Christmas, so they did all of the holiday shopping they could. They were the types of people who went out shopping for the best deals and got their kid whatever they wanted. I'll admit, I enjoyed that, but they were also strict on certain stuff. Anyway, I was in my room watching The Terminator, just enjoying myself when I hear a knock at my front door. This was strange, as we almost never hear any knocks unless it was the mailman. However, I knew that it couldn't have been him, as he had came by just the other day. Assuming it had to be my parents returning from their errands, I opened the door and was greeted to not my parents, but some man. He was tall, maybe 6'6", and wore a long black trench coat with a hat and some glasses. He introduced himself as Mr. Vasquez and told me he was new to the area and had just moved in down the street. I wasn't sure what to say other than it was nice to meet you, and so I did just that. Then I had asked him what his first name was and why he was at my house. There was a long pause before he softly chuckled and said that he was here to give my parents something. That's when he pulls out an envelope from his coat and hands it to me. I take a closer look and see that there was nothing written on it, nor had it been stamped or anything to tell where it may have come from. I then ask him what was inside and how he knew my parents. However, he disregarded my question and patted me on the head and told me to have a nice day. I then see him go on his way into the snow and disappear down the street. I may have been 13, but I was definitely not stupid, and there was something about him that just felt off. I wasn't sure if it was the way he was avoiding my questions or his delivery, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Not wanting to go into it and too tired to care, I leave the envelope on the kitchen counter and waited for my parents to get home. That being said, I finished my movie and remember going downstairs to play with some toys when I see my parents' car pull in. For some reason, I felt a sense of relief as I figured they would finally clear up the envelope situation. When they came inside, I told them about the man who had come and said there was mail for them. They then had these confused looks on their faces and began to ask me about the man. I couldn't really remember any features other than that he was tall and wore a hat. I felt stupid in the moment for not thinking twice about my suspicions. My dad grabs the letter opener and opens the envelope where he pulls out a picture. In this picture were two kids who looked to be in their mid-teen years. One of them was a boy and the other a girl, both of them looking distressed and frightened by something. They appeared like they had been kidnapped by whoever took the photo. With my dad being friends with a cop, he was able to identify the photo as coming from a Polaroid, but wasn't able to identify who those teens were. The town sheriff's office would do a whole investigation on finding out who the people in that photo were and the man I had seen. One thing they did know was that the man I had seen was almost certainly linked to the kidnappings. This investigation went on for a year, with the only lead being an empty wallet found by the local library. Police believe this was connected to the case somehow. Other than that, I haven't heard any updates since. While the investigation was never solved, I did have several questions about it. Why did this man target my house? Why did he not want to reveal his identity? And what would I have done had he decided to do something to me too? Would he have taken me too, or do something entirely worse? Not a day goes by where this doesn't haunt me, and I still look for updates till this day. There has got to be something we can do to prevent this stuff from happening.